This is Marketing Mixtape, where people like you become better marketers. And now, this is your host, the Professor, Scott Davis.
Hello and welcome back to Marketing Mixtape. I am Scott Davis. After a nearly 2-year hiatus, I had to bring the show back to celebrate an important event that is very near and dear to my heart. My good friend Cleo Franklin published his first ever book, Coffee with Cleo, this week. I read the book and it's packed full of practical insights and self-reflection that we're going to discuss on this episode. Cleo has graciously taught several MBA courses with me at University of Houston downtown. He has over 30 years of experience in business and marketing. He is the most genuine and knowledgeable person I know in business. He is selfless, he's purpose-driven, and I am delighted to have him on the show today to discuss Coffee with Cleo, which you can order on Amazon or on his website at franklinss.com. Well, Cleo, again, I just want to thank you for returning to the show, which itself has been on hiatus for quite a while, but I really appreciate you joining me for this interview. Thank you and welcome.
You're very welcome, Scott. I'm sure that not only are your fan base has missed you, but I'm just pleased to be able to come back on your show and talk about something that I feel that people will be very excited to hear. So thank you for having me back.
Good. Well, I think it's evidence that your book is a motivating one because it made me want to jump back into recording the podcast. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
And we've known each other for a few years now, and I feel like I know you pretty well, Cleo. We've taught a bunch of different courses and sections together. We've taught online together now, and of course we've taught face to face. But after reading through the book, which is wonderful, I thought an interesting way to start the interview might be to ask, what's something that most people don't know about you that you would like us to know?
Boy, Scott, by the way, you're a very good interviewer. I would call it an icebreaker question, and you are definitely breaking the ice. Well, I'll start with probably 3 things. One is people may not know my great love of music. Not only do I love music, I have an extensive library with my iPod and across classical music to R&B, classic rock, jazz, etc. It's been passed down to my children, and they seem to love that as well. I also played the violin. I was first violin for 3 years in grade school or junior high, which of course is one of my loves. So, and I'm also I sing. And so those music from just the love of it, being able to have the opportunity to play an instrument, and the violin is probably one of the most beautiful instruments in the world. And also having the ability to carry a tune is something that I think people may not know about me.
That's great. And I'll say, even though I'm curious, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to sing a cappella for us. What are you playing right now? What music did you listen to most recently?
Oh, that's very good. I just downloaded several songs from a musician in Canada by the name of Looney. Also, a couple of classic tunes from Marvin Gaye, as well as some from Curtis Mayfield. And the other one was from Ambrosia in the Atlanta Rhythm Band section. So, those are the 4 different particular groups that I just have added to my iPod collection.
Okay, very nice. Very good. I've been able to reconnect with music in some ways, being through the lockdown and everything that's happening. Let's jump in a little bit now, or fully now, into Coffee with Cleo. I know that this book was a labor of love for you. It's something that's been a long time coming. But I want to ask you, not only why did you decide to write a book, but also why did you decide to write this book in this style?
Well, one of the things, one of the goals of mine for a long time was to write a book. I do write poetry, and I've been writing poetry probably for almost 40 plus years. I'm an avid reader, voracious reader. I read probably 3 books at a time. My mother would take all of my brothers and sisters from a very early age, walk almost 10 blocks to a library by the name of the Tallman Branch Library on the west side of Chicago. And once I got inside the walls of the library, a whole new world would open up to me, and my mind would just take me, I would say I would go through 15 different emotions. It's like a kid going to Disney World for the very, very first time. And that's how I felt about the library. So being an avid reader and a voracious reader, writing is something that is important to me. And so I felt like it was one of my life goals to write a book. And the type of book I wanted to write about was really about leadership. I'm a big fan of leadership. I've studied some of the best from, of course, Stephen Covey, Warren Bennis, you name them. I don't think that there's not someone who really is immersed in that particular genre that I haven't read. I even took a class in grad school. But one of the things I wanted to provide was something that was very relatable, something that got rid of all of the buzzwords and spoke very plain language, but also apply personal experiences of failure and success and tell it as if a storyteller was giving the message, which storytelling has been with us from the dawn of time. And it's a very good way to not only pass along information, knowledge, lessons. And so I'm a big fan of storytelling, and that's what I tried to accomplish with this book. And I hope that I was able to do so.
That's great. Yeah, you did that very effectively. And I think that the theme of storytelling is very evident, and you brought a lot of humility to your stories is one thing that really stood out to me in the book. And as a marketing professor, I can't overstate the importance of storytelling in effective marketing. And we do that in a variety of ways, of course, with advertising, with data analysis. Really, it's woven throughout the field of marketing. So I really like the way that you brought storytelling into the book as almost a background tool to communicate your message about leadership. So very well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
And in terms of, you mentioned the books about leadership. Who did you write this book for specifically? Is it just for people who are currently leading in organizations? Who is the intended audience?
The primary audience for this book is for aspiring leaders, people that are looking to become a leader. You may have the supervisor or the manager that is probably 4, 5, or 7, 8 steps away from the C-suite, which I was blessed to basically find a way there. But it's really primarily for that type of person. And also for students that are looking to pursue a career once they've completed high school or graduation from college. But the secondary audience is for leaders, not just at the mid-level, mid-management, but also for leaders that have been at that particular craft for a while. Every leader should embrace continuous improvement, constant learning, and even the best leaders surround themselves with mnemonic devices or people that keep them grounded and remind them of some of the lessons that they forgot. And so that is the book's intended audience from a primary and secondary audience.
Very good. And I think that coming from my angle as a professor, even those early leaders, early aspiring leaders will be able to glean a lot of useful information that they'll be able to carry with them throughout their career. So I felt like the audience it has some focus to it in terms of its business application, but really anyone who's going to be leading in any context is going to take away something from the book. So I appreciated that element of it.
Yeah, and Scott, if in fact, as marketers, we better be able to practice your segment, target, and market, correct?
That's right.
And that's the science of marketing. It's not this black box, Jedi magic, dark art stuff, but it's true science. And that is truly the primary and secondary audience. But I agree with you. It's for anyone. Anyone that is looking to not only understand really the experiences, not just from early stages of my career before I got involved in leadership to the middle to now where I have my own business and an entrepreneur. But it's for anyone that is truly not only looking to learn how to improve their livelihood, but more importantly, how to improve their life. So that's important to me. And good. I feel that within the book, hopefully there's some lessons learned that can be applied, and anyone that picks this book up across the globe will be able to relate to.
Excellent. Well said. And I agree with that. Continuing this theme of leadership, one thing that immediately is going to stand out to anyone who reads the book is that the foreword to the book is written by Anand Mahindra, the chairman of Mahindra Group, where you worked for a number of years. Very famous Indian businessman, and gosh, what an excellent person to write a foreword. I can't think of anybody better. What did that mean to you that he agreed to write the foreword to this book, to Coffee with Cleo?
It meant a lot to me. Anand Mahindra, I've known since 2011, and I felt like when I joined as the vice president of strategic planning and of course marketing for Mahindra here in North America, but I studied the Mahindra Group back when I worked in John Deere. And Mahindra was an upcoming, audacious challenger. And at that time, they didn't make a mark as a leader in globally, but their statement, their mission statement was to be the world's #1 selling tractor. And guess what? That happened. So Anand Mahindra, for me, I call him a colleague and a friend. And the way that he leads, you're talking about a gentleman that is a billionaire, runs a $20+ billion multinational company with over 100 companies in 100 countries. Of course, represents the country at Davos. He's a Forbes top 30, 50 leader. But yet and still, he's authentic, he's humble, he's accessible, he's connected, and he has great empathy beyond himself and beyond the products and the services that he really offers to his customers. He's more concerned about the well-being of the community and the people that work for him, but also the people that he serves, to make sure that whatever the Mahindra Group is doing is improving their livelihood and their way of life. And that resonates with me because that aligns 100% with my values. And so that's why it means a lot to me to have Anand write forward, but also to be able to call him a friend.
Wonderful. And based on your description, it's very evident to me now why you were such a good fit with him and with the organization as a whole. It's starting to click for me personally. Let's jump into the content of the book a little bit. And you start off the book really describing your struggle with patience, which I found interesting because I don't think I would have pinned that on you if somebody asked me that. I wouldn't describe you as impatient. But you led the book with vulnerability, and this is a theme. I mentioned humility that's found throughout the book. Why did you decide to do that? And maybe it relates to what you talked about earlier, getting away from stuffiness.
Well, there's a quote from Don Quixote, of course, Man of La Mancha, and where he's a scene where he's on his horse, his gallant steed, his stallion, and he has his sword, and he's jousting it back and forth in the air. And of course, his sidekick is like, what in the heck is this guy doing? And he's shouting out. And as if he's fighting an imaginary foe. And so the reason why I'm using that as a metaphor is that, we live in a three-dimensional world. And so it's hard to fight ghosts and windmills. And because we as human beings are very complex, dynamic individuals with lots of experiences, we have our strengths and our weaknesses. I think it's important that we're authentic and we showcase ourselves and open up ourselves and not hide the good or the bad. And so we can call that self-awareness, but I like to take it as being humble. And humility is a very good level setting tool for one's ego. I believe either you're going to be humble or you're going to be humbled. And I've been humbled, make no mistake. And so I think it's important as a leader, and what's worked for me, and I've learned this through failures, I've learned this by making mistakes, is that the best way that you can connect is to understand yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, but also be someone who's not afraid to showcase who you are fully, consistently, 100% of the time. We all have our issues. We all have our challenges. And if you want to be authentic or real, then you have to basically not hide that. And when people see that, especially the Gen Zs and millennials, without question, they have this BS detector. They know folks that who are not real. And I think it's important that you stay true to yourself and be very self-aware and represent that aspect of you. So, Scott, that's the reason why. I mean, I've been a very successful person on and off before business, as an athlete, as a business person, lots of awards and accolades. And I think sometimes we tend to hold our leaders up so high and glamorize them and not look at the fact that there's more to them when you pull back the curtain. And these folks, like myself, have issues, and you need to face those issues and be aware of them and deal with them. So that's the reason why I open up the book that way. And throughout my stories through the book, I talk about and trying to tell stories, and they all come from places where I was either humbled or I was humbled.
Wonderful. Very good. Yeah, and I think I've seen a lot of emphasis on this on social media, but I think there's definitely a lag in terms of authenticity in finding this in the business literature. Yes. And it really did stand out to me, the style of writing and the level of honesty in the book, which was much appreciated. If we could move on now to the next concept I'd like to discuss, if you'll take a moment to explain the concept of bringing an elephant, and which is really cool. And then on a more serious note, we're recording this in June 2020. So if there are ways you can think to apply this concept to some of our current pressing social issues, such as Black Lives Matter and COVID-19, I would love to hear that, your thoughts on application of this concept.
Without question. No, that's in one of the chapters that I've written in the book about Bring an Elephant. And, it really has, it has ties to history. Of course, the great military strategist Hannibal Barca, who had Rome trembling at their feet when he took his war elephants across the Alps. I mean, this is unimaginable. And the Romans at the time never saw elephants. And once those elephants basically took on part of the tactics that Hannibal deployed, he really got not only the attention of the Roman army, but he really scared them and disrupted their ability, which was very structured and very regimented. And so the concept of bringing an elephant really has to do with getting someone's attention. I think whether you're in business and specifically in the chapter that I was speaking at a conference of educators, and the discussion was around whether you educate or do you engage? And I think students want to be educated, but you first have to engage them. And to engage someone, you need to capture their attention. And using the metaphor or the tool of an elephant really has to do with, so what is it that you have in your suite of tools or in your process or in your methodology that is going to first gain someone's attention so that you can gain their interest to be able to engage them, that is distinctive, that's not mundane, but that is very unique, that will allow them to give you their attention. And so that's important for me, no matter in how I live my life or how I apply this within my business career, is that I think it's important that you find this unique value proposition aspect that you're offering that really separates you from the commodities or from whatever else is offered, that will capture the attention first. Because without attention, you cannot engage. Without engagement, you're not going to be able to go beyond anything else to carry anything through, no matter what your objective is. You talk about in today's world with COVID-19, of course, Black Lives Matter, the injustice and disproportionate things that are happening within our police system, our judicial system. I'm going to say this. I think the elephant is in a room already, and the elephant are all these things, such as COVID-19, which is the pandemic, unemployment, of course, with the economy not in the best shape, and then with the recent events in the social area. Those are the things that have finally got people, not only cross-generationally, is multicultural and global, to start thinking and talking about these very critical subjects, these very critical aspects in our lives that they never have done before because of those things that I've just talked about. For me, they're the elephant. The introduction of the pandemic, the introduction of people basically having to shelter at home in place, change their lives and adjust. Now they're paying attention in a way, whereas if we didn't have the pandemic, it would be business as usual. It would also be in a way where people would not be engaged in not just what's happening in the news, but also the ability to look at things such as what happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, in a way that if this wasn't existing today, would probably given us a different reaction. So the attention getting, the disrupting of the normal and how business has been ran or how we normally have lived our lives, I think are those particular elements that have been introduced into our world, and they've gained the attention of everyone, and it really is making a difference because we're now engaged.
That's good. And one thing that's really stood out to me is I guess three things that have stood out to me. The magnitude of the voices, I think,
Yes.
is different than what we would have found maybe in the pre-social media era. Also, the disaggregation of voices. Now, it doesn't have to run through NBC or ABC or Fox or CNN or one of the major news channels or the local newspaper. Individuals now can have a voice that picks up momentum, which I think is remarkable, and also the persistence. And I think, not letting the message fall off, which is what typically happens in a 24-hour news cycle, has been something that's kind of unprecedented, I think, in this era. So the way I framed the question probably wasn't fair because, there's not a single elephant here. It's this
It's a herd of elephants.
Exactly. It's a herd of elephants, and this kind of perfect storm in terms of the current environment with our communication channels, with the pandemic, with the way businesses are operating, and with the visibility of the injustices that are occurring. So everything's come together and created this momentum so that the elephants can go forth and spread the message and make it so that the message can't be ignored?
You know what, Scott, the thing about it is you're absolutely right. It's not that people didn't have the time, and whether they did, I don't know whether or not people were taking the time. But because of the fact that we were forced into this particular situation, driven by the pandemic, coupled with unemployment, the economy, and all these social events that have happened before, people are all watching now. And we're all watching together. And the pandemic, it touched us all across the globe. And because of technology and everyone having the opportunity to absorb and consume media in so many different ways, not when I was growing up, I think is right. It has created the perfect storm, and it has caused this engagement that is really, as they said, the genie's out of the bottle. The train has moved from the station, it's on the road, and I think we're off to a better place. And I love the momentum, I love the energy, and I cannot wait to see what's going to happen as this next generation take us forward. Of course, as they take these elephants across the Alps to take on the things that need to change. And it's changing, and it will change. So the elephant the herd of elephants is out there, ready to go.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. So now you're a published author now. You're a published author. I wanted to ask you, I think a lot of us in academia, ones who aren't published in popular press, have aspirations for writing something someday. So this has a little bit of a personal tint to it as well. But what advice do you have for aspiring authors out there?
Courage. Courage, patience. I would also say that it's important that you surround yourself with people that you trust to bounce your ideas off, to truly go back and forth and to pound out and really hone in and refine an idea. So you have to have this board of directors of your, how can I say it, whatever particular book you're writing. I would say assemble a board of directors, good editors, good ideators, folks that have done it before, and to also read the first chapter of my book because the power of patience is going to be needed. You're talking about a guy who's very impatient, but you have to practice patience. So I would give that advice. I would also say, if there's something that you have great passion and interest in, whether it's a topic or there's a particular activity or hobby, I would start with that, because it's difficult to write something that you're not interested in. And especially to not just write it, but to edit it and to edit it and edit it and edit again.
Yes.
The edit process of writing, and I'm pretty detailed. I thought I was very detailed, but going through this particular procedure, I wasn't as detailed enough, nor as patient. But that would be my advice to aspiring publishers or authors. And the best way to write is to write. As they say, before you cut wood, you need to spend time sharpening the saw. So I would say continue to write, but if you're going to write something that truly holds your interest, but also surround yourself with a group of people that have written, right, and people that have some of the particular skills that you're going to need in getting your book from stem to stern, from beginning to the end.
Good. Very good advice. That's good. I think in just anecdotally, what you say resonates, because some people that I've talked to will start the process of writing a book and then at some point discover that maybe this isn't either what they know or what they're passionate about. And that is kind of a deal breaker in most cases.
Yes, this book has been on the table. I've been working at this book for about 8-9 years.
That's great. Well, what an accomplishment to see it through to the end. I'm sure that the end may have been the most challenging part, because I'm pretty sure that's when you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's and doing all the micro editing. But it's good that you've you've brought it all the way across the finish line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm about ready to celebrate tonight. As we say today, it's available on Barnes & Noble as well as Amazon.com. So a nice bourbon will be sipped on this evening.
Wonderful. And I have one final question regarding the book, and maybe it's a couple of questions that I snuck in here. But chapter 2, The Lessons from Your Father, is probably my favorite chapter of the book. And you talk about your parents and your relationship with your parents quite a lot and very candidly. What are the most enduring lessons that you could share with us from your parents? And then as a follow-up to that, what will your legacy be?
It's a great question, Scott. Today is June 19th, and two events that are very critical. First of all, Juneteenth, the celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was in 1863, but it took till 1865 for that news to be heard in Texas. So my ancestors that had additional 2 years of the change of slavery was basically the news came on this day. So I celebrate the importance and significance of that day. The second one is very personal. Today is my dad's birthday, June 19th.
Wow.
And you asked me the question about my parents, but chapter 2, lessons, of course, father's legacy and lessons learned. My dad was a very interesting gentleman. And in the book, and we've talked about this early on about being vulnerable, but I'm also honest. And I think the worst thing that one can do is to fool themselves and lie to yourself. And so my dad, I didn't like him very much when I was a young man, although I'm named after him. But over the years, I got to know him, and he passed away in May 18th of 2015. But that being said, my dad, these are some of the lessons that I've learned from him. One is, if you can say it in 10 words, do it.
Yeah.
He was amazing. So less is more. My dad was not like me. You know, he was not a fan of verbosity and long-winded speakers, but he would make his point and he would say it, what people would say in 60 words, he could say in 5 or 10, and you would understand him. So that was a good lesson from him. But the other thing that I've learned from my dad was that he worked 2 jobs. He worked at the post office in Chicago, and he was a barber by trade. And of course, a former Korean War veteran. And as I said, not only was a man of few words, he didn't spend a lot of time, but it took with us. But the time he spent, he was very present. I mean, he gave you his full attention. So the other lesson I would pass on is it's not so much the time you spend, but the quality of the time you spend. And when you spend it with someone and you're engaging or interacting, make sure you are 100% fully present. The last lesson I would share that I've been able to take away from my father, and this is important. Although he was a man of few words, he was very honest. And if you asked him a question, he would not only answer it, but he would tell it straight and tell it true. And so honesty for him is the best policy. So in today's world of spin, of propaganda, he did not have a lot of time for that. If a person asks you a question, give them a straight answer. And I think those are 3 lessons that I feel is very, very important that have been passed down from my father that I still struggle with at times, even answering this question, being a little bit long-winded, but those are important for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. You barely went over 60 words, I think. That's good. That's very good, though.
I think you had a second part to your question.
I was asking about your legacy. What do you think? What do you think your legacy is going to look like?
Oh my gosh. Well, all I can say is I guess that's up for my kids, my children, the people, the business leaders that I've worked with, folks I've mentored, the students that you and I teach, startups that I sit on their board of directors with, they'll have to write that legacy. I don't know what it's going to be. I would just hope that it is that Cleo Franklin was a man of his word. He had a very high say-do ratio, and he tried his best to be an example of the change that he wanted to see in this world. He's a man of action and less talk. And if there's a problem, he doesn't like to talk about it. He likes to basically roll up his sleeves and do something about the change. So hopefully that legacy is around those particular elements that I just explained.
Especially the high do to say ratio, I think is very present in the way you live your life, and very admirable. Well, Cleo, I'm not going to take any more of your time, but I really appreciate you coming on to talk to me, to describe some of the aspects of the book, where people are going to find value in the book. And honestly, we couldn't even cover it all. So I think that if you have any interest in Cleo's book, which I really hope that you do, check out Coffee with Cleo. And what's the best way for people to do that?
You can go to www.franklin, S as in Sam.com. That's www.franklin, S as in Sam.com in order. Or you can go to Amazon.com and just search Coffee with Cleo Franklin, or to Barnes & Noble and buy the book there. And I really think that people who would go out and read the book will find it very refreshing. And also, maybe for those entrepreneurs out there, they'll probably figure out that it has a little bit of a construct of taking an entrepreneurial mindset to life. And they would enjoy that as well. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur to take an entrepreneurial mindset to life. It's just one of those things where you have to be fearless and authentic and honest and passionate, and go out there and not be afraid to fail, but do it. And if you fail, learn from it and do it again. So that's where you can purchase the book. And those are some of the elements I wanted to close with you today, Scott. And I really appreciate you taking the time to interview me about
Very
the book.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. And where can people follow you?
Oh, you can follow me on Twitter. Of course, Coffee with Cleo, at Coffee with Cleo on Twitter. You can follow me as well on Facebook, and that's Cleo Franklin. And the only thing else I would say is that Google me. I'm easy to find.
And LinkedIn too. You're great on LinkedIn as well.
I'm everywhere. I'm 6'3" and cowboy boot wearing guy, and easy to find. I also on my YouTube page as well with Cleo Franklin. So thanks so much, Scott. This has been a great time to talk about the book, and I really enjoyed speaking with you, and hope the audience would appreciate and enjoy our conversation.
Well, thank you, Cleo. Have a wonderful rest of the day and a beautiful weekend ahead. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. God bless and all the best.
Take care.
If you enjoyed listening, please subscribe, rate and review Marketing Mixtape on iTunes, and visit scottwdavis.com for more information.